Sam Njoku, host of the Ravens Talk podcast here. Daniel Faalele is officially no longer a Raven. We'll talk about where he is up next.
And the Ravens kicked off their offseason program on Monday, and some Ravens spoke to the media about everything that's going on in the building right now. Locked On Ravens Squad show starts right now.
Rise and shine. It's the Ravens Squad. Everything Baltimore Ravens every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the heart of Charm City. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Flock together and squad up. The Ravens Squad show starts now.
What is going on, Ravens flock? Welcome to another episode of the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. This is Sam Njoku, join me, Kevin Oestreicher, and special guest Femi. I am Badejio Sr. here talking about Ravens football here on a Wednesday evening. It is a good time to be a Baltimore Raven as we had the Ravens players speak to the media for the first time since really the end of the season last year. So there's plenty to get to on that. Daniel Faalele, a very hot topic, button item, I guess, a name that gets Ravens fans going either which way. News dropped on him. He is no longer a Baltimore Raven. We'll talk about where he is and what to expect from him in his new destination. Just general Ravens news as we get closer and closer to the draft. We know there's going to be 11 picks selected by the Ravens, at least for now. Depending on Kadri Ismail, could be up to 4. Maybe only 4 picks of big-time players. We'll see, but the Ravens will definitely be working the next few weeks getting ready for that draft. But first, let's talk about the players. The players spoke to the media today. Lots of interesting nuggets from different players. Kyle Hamilton spoke. Zay Flowers spoke a lot of interesting things. I want to start with Kyle Hamilton. And Femi, I'll start with you here because Kyle Hamilton had a very interesting thing to say about Jesse Minter. He said that Jesse Minter let us know that the standard in which the Ravens play defense has not been met recently, making it very much known to the players and to the Ravens fans. The change is coming. After hearing those words from Kyle Hamilton, what are your initial thoughts about what Kyle Hamilton had to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all know that, right? I think that you and I spoke on your show yesterday about the fact that, there's a culture here, and it's about special teams, running the football, and playing defense. That's what we do. And we know that last year, where there was a regression defensively, we know the offensive line regressed, and as a whole, the team regressed in regard to the standard and the expectation. I mean, we were mocked as Super Bowl champion, potentially, at least making a Super Bowl appearance last year, and we fell short of that. I do think some of the things that happened, a lot of times when we talk about turnovers and injuries, those are a little bit more art than science sometimes. You can't really count on those happening, but also in regard to how it affects your season, hopefully that doesn't strike us twice, So I think there's going to be a huge force multiplier from Declan and a huge force multiplier from Jesse Minter. And I think to some degree, Kyle was acknowledging the regression and the lack of meeting expectation. But it's awesome when Coach Minter steps into the room day one and says, hey, we all know the elephant in the room. We didn't meet the standard. I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen again. So that's super encouraging to hear.
Yeah, it was awesome. And I think the big thing is that, like you said, Femi, this team has been built on defense for forever. Lamar Jackson's come in and he's kind of redefined what offense looks like. And it's like, the Ravens can put up like 40 points a game now. But the defensive standard has never left the building, even though Lamar has come in. And so, we heard Marlon Humphrey last year talk about how they want to set that standard back, and it never really happened these past couple of seasons. And there have been a lot of great defensive units, right? Obviously, we know about 2000, but, then there's 2006, 2000, even 23. That was not even that long ago. There's always been a standard of defense. And one of the things that I think is really key, and I talked about this actually a couple hours ago on Locked On Ravens PM, is they just need to start faster. And that's not even just offensively. That's just as a team in general. But it's taken a long time, each of the last 2 seasons, for this defense to find themselves. Last season, it took them half the year. They had to have the closed door meeting or whatever it was after that second Cincy game. And they finally found their footing, but it took them a really long time to do so. This past season, they had their spurts and their moments, but there was just too much inconsistency of, week 1, the Ravens put up 40 points. You probably win that game in most circumstances and situations, but your defense just can't get the job done. And so defensively, they have the talent to do it, right? And I think that with Jesse Minter coming in and Anthony Weaver, and that's something Kyle Hamilton mentioned too, is that those two have been really good at just kind of like defining the standards that are going to have to be had here. And that's something Jesse Minter's really said from day one. It's like they're welcoming the high expectations and the high standards, both internally and externally. Like they understand, like fans want, like they know what the standard is from the fans here in Baltimore, because that has been set over many seasons of Ravens football. So I'm excited for the new era here. And I think that with Jesse Minter's floor raising ability, because we saw guys in Los Angeles who he got the best out of, guys who were reviving their careers, later round draft picks. I think Jesse Minter is able to find ways to put guys in position to get the best out of them on defense. And it was cool to hear him talk about like the offensive side of it and be like, hey, that part's new to me, but he's working through it. He's getting acclimated, and I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, let me add two things to that. Sorry, Sam. Somebody want to say? Go ahead. Yeah. So Tony Jefferson had a great season last year, underrated season. Derwin James found his footing again when Jesse came back. So we can expect Malachi Starks. I think his season was underwhelming, but a lot of that had to do with the front. I think losing an All-Pro like Beeks is difficult. I think we're going to get him back. We're going to add another All-Pro in Trey Hendrickson, right? I think Jadeveon Clowney is out there. Maybe Bain falls to us at 14. Who knows, right? But there's just so many things to be optimistic about. And one of the things I talked to Sam about that I think people take for granted is that we have this history and culture that we're just bigger and you know what we're going to do, but you can't stop us. A little shine came off that rock last year. That diamond wasn't as blingy. And I think that this upgrade in schematics and philosophy that we haven't seen in a really long time on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball. Coach Monken is a great coach. He's probably going to be a better head coach than he was a coordinator, and I thought he was a damn good coordinator. But I wouldn't say there was anything innovative about in what he does. I think he understood Lamar Jackson. He understood that we want to run the ball, but at times still got away from the run. At times the offense got predictable, especially when Pat Ricard came in the game, especially when you pull out Derrick Henry. Like, it's kind of like you know what's coming. In the past, we could be like, hey, we dare you to stop us. You know what's coming, but we dare you to stop us. The wheels kind of fell off a little bit. There was a little bit of air coming out of the tires. I think this is going to be a whole new, different approach, a lot more under center, a lot more boots, a lot more play action, a lot more outside zone. And I'm here for it. And Sam, when you and I were talking yesterday, I could barely keep myself contained. It's, it's 7, it's a little bit later right now, right? A little bit later in the evening. Your boy's a little calmer. I don't have my triple espresso next to me, so I'm going to be calm. But yeah, there's a lot of things to be excited about in Baltimore. And the new uniform's coming next week. Oh, I can't wait. Wait.
So, yeah. I haven't even touched on that. Oh, yeah. We need to have a show about that next week. The new uniforms are coming out. Well, let me ask you this, Femi, because you've been around Baltimore for a long time now. You know what the culture is. You talked about the standard and how, no matter who's coming in here, it's all about playing defense, special teams, running the football. Are you surprised, even with Lamar Jackson being in tow, and how, when you have a big star quarterback like Lamar Jackson, that the focus pushes on the offense? It just feels like even if the Ravens are doing well throwing the football, they're firing all cylinders in offense, the defense struggles, fans are still upset. Fans here are all about defense. Are you surprised that is still the case after all these years, even though we have MVP in Lamar Jackson?
No, I'm not surprised. I think that Lamar has brought, and obviously his skill set and what he does is he's the prototype now. He is the archetype of what everyone wants a quarterback to be. And you see what is happening at the lower levels of football, from youth football through high school and college. Like, everybody's a dual athlete now. Big arm, athleticism, can throw on the run, can use their legs to get a first down conversion. Even the young kid who's going to be the number 1 pick out of Indiana. I don't know why I'm blinking. Mendoza, Fernando Mendoza. Like, I see a lot of why am I drawing a blank right now? Quarterback out of Stanford, played for the Colts.
Oh, Andrew Luck.
Andrew Luck, guys, my apologies. I see a ton. Sorry. Maybe I do need my coffee, but I see a ton of Andrew Luck in Mendoza. And a lot of people are like, oh, that's an interesting comp. But look at the way that Fernando Mendoza uses his legs when it's needed. He's more athletic than you think. And he's got a big arm, and he's a precise passer. Andrew Luck was all of those things, right? So I think that I'm not going to say that Fernando Mendoza is going to go out there and say, oh, yeah, I watch a ton of Lamar Jackson. He's motivated me to do these things. I just think that it's become ubiquitous across the league now. It's almost expected that you need to be athletic at the quarterback position. And Lamar Jackson, one of the best things that Coach Harbaugh did is that he gave Lamar Jackson the space to be everything that we see him today. How many coaches and how many front offices would have had the courage to pick a guy that they say needs to switch positions, didn't necessarily like his delivery, thought he was more of an athlete than a QB. He's a Heisman winner. I mean, obviously, he was playing in a pro offense with Petrino at Louisville, but no one gave him credit for that. And Harbs had the Harbs and Ozzie and Eric and Steve Bisciotti said, you know what, we're going to bring this kid here and we're going to let him be him. We're going to build this offense around him. And the truth of the matter is that Lamar can play in any offense. We didn't know that then, but we know that now. And there's a bunch of kids that are growing up in football that are coming into the NFL now that I think owe a debt of gratitude to Lamar because of how he's evolved at the quarterback position. So, I just think everything's right in front of us. So that all being said, I think it's an honor and a privilege to have Lamar here. And I just can't wait to see kind of how this offense evolves and what Declan, does and what relationship coach mentor, what is he going to pull out of Lamar that Harbs maybe wasn't able to?
Yeah, and I think it's really cool also because the way that the offense and defense are married to one another is still, I think, underrated to a lot of people. Is that I think they're both kind of separate to some people where it's like, well, if your offense is good, your defense, if they're not good, it's okay and all that. And there are ways that you can get around that. But if your defense is getting 3 and outs, it keeps them fresh. It keeps the opposing defense also on the field, especially if your offense can throw together, whether it's quick touchdown drives or if you just want to go back to the Greg Roman days and run the ball for 10 minutes and you're just tiring them out and then your defense gets a stop and the opposing defense is like, we just got off the field 2 minutes ago. Now we just played 13 plays. Got to go back out there. So it's all married together. And so I think the vision that this coaching staff has, we've heard Jesse Minter, Declan Doyle, all these guys talk about the relationship building and the aspect of that. Feels like they're all very united on that front. We see Jesse Minter out there with Zay Flowers at the Orioles game, just chopping it up and having fun and building those relationships early. The guys coming in the building, setting a tone. It feels like everybody, at least to me, is bought in. Look, I don't claim to know what happened last season in that locker room. I have no idea, but it just didn't feel right to me for a lot of that season. And it feels like the energy, it feels like these guys, and we heard some of these guys today say that they're energized with the coaching staff. And, like Mark Andrews said, he was privileged to, play under John Harbaugh, and that was great for him, but he's excited with this new era of football. And I think you can still keep some of the old stuff, obviously. Like you want to have that defensive edge that we have seen many years in this organizational history, the offensive edge that Lamar Jackson has given them. And we know with that 2023 team, which I sometimes still think to myself, man, how did that team not win a Super Bowl with how good that offense and defense was? But to get back to that of knowing that you can have a dominant offense that walks defenses down and a defensive unit that the opposing offense can't stay on the field against, it's going to tire out the opposing units and make those opposing units weaker over the course of 4 quarters, which helps everybody out. And when you have the star power on both sides of the football like the Ravens do, I do have belief that they can get back to that, especially when you're talking about the new coaching staff and some of the new mentality I expect Baltimore to have this.
Yeah, and sorry, Sam, I am one thing I didn't answer that you guys were alluding to was, okay, we're a defensive culture, that's what we do, right? Defense and special teams, right? So the thread that I want to tie through to kind of bring it full circle is that no matter how well we play on offense, that we'll never be satisfied unless the defense is good, right? So, all this kind of, appreciation that I have for Harbs giving Lamar the space to grow into what he's become, it doesn't eliminate the fact that we're not going to be Cincinnati. We're not going to be okay winning 40-38. We're never going to be okay with that. So I think to kind of bring it full circle, yes, no matter how good Lamar is, no matter how many MVPs he wins, unless we win a Super Bowl, we do it with our defense being good, we're not going to be satisfied. So Sam, sorry, I had to get that in because I definitely didn't answer the question that you asked me.
No, that's a very good point. I just feel like, I don't know if we were just brainwashed with it. It just seems like we just need defense to come out here. I love a 6-3 ball game more so than you mentioned a 40-38 game. It's just something about defense in Baltimore has just stuck with me, and it's going to continue to stick with us. And I think that's a good hire by Eric DeCosta, by Steve Bisciotti to bring in a guy like Jesse Minter to get this defense back on track. And I'm sure, and we saw that Kyle Hamilton agrees with it. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk a little more about the Ravens, and Daniel Faalele is on the news again. Might be talking about him for the last time, but we got to put a pin on it, put the chapter, close that book on Daniel Faalele, and see he's moving on to another destination. We'll talk about where that is next here on the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. Financial stress is something a lot of people are carrying right now. It's not just about numbers. It can affect your sleep, your relationships, and your overall mental health in ways that build up over time. And the reality is, struggling with money doesn't mean you failed. Sometimes it just means you haven't had the right kind of support. It's something I've thought about, how easy it is to put pressure on yourself financially without really talking about it. The stress that comes with trying to figure everything out on your own, the expectations you feel to everything together, and how that pressure can spill into other areas of your life. Therapy isn't about financial advice. It's about working through the stress, the anxiety, and the emotions that come with it. With over 30,000 licensed therapists and more than 6 million people served, BetterHelp makes it easier to get matched and start focusing on what you need. When life feels overwhelming, therapy can help. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's betterhelp.com/lockedon. We are back, Locked On Ravens Squad Show. Sam and Joku, Kevin Oestreicher, and special guest Kit Femi. I am Dave Joe Sr. here, talking Ravens football on a Wednesday. A quick reminder that we're here Mondays and Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, talking Ravens football all year long, even throughout the offseason. You can also catch Kevin on the Locked On Ravens podcast twice a day, 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. The 6 p.m. show just dropped today. The 6 a.m. episode will be dropping tomorrow, so make sure you tune in for that as well. Also want to let you know that don't forget to check out the Everydayers Club for ad-free episodes and access to a group chat with Kevin and other listeners of the show. Tap the link on the show notes or go to LockedOnRavens.com. Okay, the Ravens are doing what they need to do to get ready for the season. Sometimes that means a little bit of addition by subtraction. Now, Daniel Faalele, former Baltimore Raven, now officially a New York Giant, John Harbaugh, has finished the infinity gauntlet of Ravens players, former Ravens players, and now he has got Daniel Faalele in his sights. He is going to be a potential starter, I guess, for the New York Giants. I know a lot of Giants fans have heard the criticisms about Daniel Faalele, so not sure what the vibe is over there, but over here, it means that the chapter is now closed on the Daniel Faalele story here in Baltimore. Femi, I will start with you because we've heard ad nauseum from Kevin, but I don't know if fans have heard directly from you about the Daniel Faalele saga. What are your initial thoughts about it?
Man, it's disappointing, right? The offensive line as a whole regressed last year, right? And I think that the way that Daniel played and just kind of when it was bad, how bad it looked, it almost didn't make sense. We always make it a point as NFL players to find work. And it looked like sometimes he was avoiding work. Like, I don't really know what was going on, especially considering how good the offensive line was in 2024. I wish nothing for the best for Daniel. I know a lot of times he was, you had to make jokes, otherwise you'd be crying or yelling or screaming, right? So our way of coping was to be playful with it, because at that point there was nothing else left to do, So I really do hope he goes to New York. I mean, I hope Harbs does well with those guys. I mean, it'd be great to meet the Giants in the Super Bowl again. That'd be kind of funny, though, wouldn't it? It would be kind of funny. But I as a player, it's my factory setting to wish the best for players. I want them to make the most money. I want them to be all pros and Pro Bowlers. As long as they lose to us when they play us, I want them to have everything. And so, all jokes aside, I hope Daniel figures it out. I don't know if it was more psychological at a certain point where he just couldn't get right. But he's too big and too talented to not be good. All he's got to do is tap into that more aggressive side of his brain, which I think we could see he was very passive at times. And to be that big, you just got to get in the way. So if he can play with aggression and just tune out all the nonsense, I think he'll be fine. But I'm happy to move on. Really excited about our number 14 pick and what that's going to mean and who we're going to look at and who we're going to draft. But I'm super happy to kind of close the Harbs and the Faalele chapter. I know it's going to come up again. I'm going to do my best to be graceful when it happens and not show my frustration. But I think it's exciting times in Baltimore, and I think that the best thing we can do. And I'm a glass half full guy, And so unless we start talking about Florio or Nick Wrong or Chris Brockman or all the haters that are out there, like, I'm usually pretty happy. But yeah, I'm ready to move on from the Faalele situation. But I appreciate you asking me about it to get my final take.
Yeah, it's important. It's definitely important to close the door on it here. And again, like at a certain point, as this went on, it wasn't even Faalele's fault anymore. You know, it was the coaching staffs were continuing to put him out there. Not that they were given a ton of options in the offseason. I mean, that's another big part here. So it's not like one particular person was to blame. Everybody, I think, had a role in this. But at the end of the day, the Ravens have acknowledged that Daniel Faalele was not right for their team. John Harbaugh has acknowledged that he wants Daniel Faalele on his team. And I think that is essentially how we can leave it here. I'm excited for it too. I mean, whether it's Vengiawane coming in at pick 14, whether it's Emory Jones winning a battle with some of these other younger guys, you have John Simpson in the building already, who you paid money to start. It is exciting. And I think that, again, with the offensive line, there's still work to be done there, but you don't, because the bar was so low last season for Faalele, and Voorhees also was not the best thing I've ever seen in the world either. So both guard spots, you can get better play, but the goal shouldn't just be to, okay, hey, let's just get somebody who's a little better than both guys, and hey, we can say we improved. The goal is obviously to get in as much talent as you can. You've lost Tyler Linderbaum, who is the anchor of that group. And so whether it is Corey Bullock winning that center job, or they draft somebody to do it, maybe they draft Spencer Fano and move him over to center. I don't know what their plan is. Your goal is just to protect your quarterback. And we saw too many times last season, the group who was on the field couldn't do it adequately enough. And we know that when you give Lamar Jackson time to survey, go through his reads, when he feels comfortable back there, he's dominant. But, when a quarterback, like I always say this with CJ Stroud, like CJ Stroud gets happy feet all the time in the pocket because his offensive line just has not been able to block for him. A lot of quarterbacks, when their offensive lines are injured or the talent's not there, that's what happens. And, you don't want Lamar Jackson to get into that pattern consistently, because we know when he's cool, calm, collected, he's one of the best passers in this NFL. So I think, Faalele had his time. And again, people, I don't think remember, he came out as a tackle. This is a guy that played tackle at Minnesota. The Ravens tried to move him inside to guard. And unfortunately, whether it was him just not having the foot speed to get out, or, getting overpowered by guys who were like 2 times lighter than he was, just like we could go through all the moments here. But the Ravens have moved on. Daniel Faalele has moved on. And we can call that chapter closed now.
Sure can. I wonder why they made that move to inside. Obviously, he's a big guy and he can bruise, but he has the arm length, 35 and 1/8 inch arms, I think, to be a successful tackle. Could it be the Ravens are, well, not the Ravens, the Giants are considering maybe moving him back to the tackle spot, or maybe using him as the 6th man in the jumbo set, whatever it is. We wish him the best, but that chapter is now officially closed. I saw a comment saying Q would miss the episode where Daniel Faalele gets released, and we're talking about his favorite player, because Q, almost as much as you, Femi, love to talk about Daniel Faalele.
We might have had the first full 15-minute rant from Q ever.
Oh, really?
On this show.
Yeah. He is, your boy is definitely.
I'm sure I heard it actually. I probably just tuned it out a little bit because I've heard quite a few Q rants over the years.
Yes.
Me and Q are homies. We're boys.
Yeah,
so. Q's a funny dude. I love Q. And man, there'll be days now where I'll just call him up. There was a day I was walking in Fells Point. I live in Harbor East. We talked for like 90 minutes.
Wow.
90 minutes, just me walking in circles with him and I. And obviously we could both talk. And Sam, we're Nigerians. You know how Nigerians do. You know how we do. We could talk, right? You know what I mean? So. Yeah. Hey, one quick thing, Kevin, that you mentioned, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it. And I think this is what makes Lamar special. So when you think about highest rated passers in NFL history, Lamar's first, Aaron Rodgers is second. People don't realize that. You might know that. I just want to drop a little tidbit for the audience. Lamar's number 1 in NFL history. What makes Lamar amazing and special is that he's surgical when he's on time, but he is otherworldly when he's off time. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like there's the first play and then there's the second play. In the first play, he could be surgical. I mean, we've already seen him do it, right? And when he gets off, kind of off time and is able to freelance, that's when he is really like super special, right? We saw that in the Pittsburgh game at the end of the year when Lamar was kind of back to peak powers. He was probably the healthiest he had been. And so I think that, you have a guy, you have guys like Kyler Murray who are not great at the first play, the call play in the huddle, but he's really good at the second play, right? But you can't live in a world where you just live on the second play because everything's timing based in the league now. And, coaches can get excited when the first play breaks down, but usually that's one play a series maybe. You can't live in that world constantly. And so I think investing in the offensive line and giving, remember in 2019 when the Ravens went, I think that they were 14-3 that year, I believe, and the number 1 seed, right? Very few people recall who the receivers were. Very few people recall who the running backs were, because Lamar had basically a who's who of offensive linemen in front of him, and everybody ate. He was Steph Curry. He was hitting threes and he was surgical on the assist game. You know what I mean? Like, everybody got fed. And that's what we want for Lamar. And that's why when people talk about Kenyon Sadiq, or, if the kid from Ohio State, the receiver falls to, I just, Carnell Tate. I can't get it. It'd be really hard for me to go get a toy when you need to build the wall of the house, right? Like, you need to kind of reestablish the foundation. And so Kenyon Sadiq has one of the highest RAS scores. I think maybe the highest RAS score in tight end history. I would love to have Kenyon Sadiq. And because of the need at the position and the need for a playmaker and potentially a big X receiver, I could talk myself into Sadiq. Now, if you get Sadiq in the first round, you got to get Chase Besantis or Pregnon in the second round. You might have to trade back up. Like, I could be okay with that. But that's betting on the board falling your way. And if you guys have done what I've done, where I've done 35,000 mock drafts, that's pretty rare. Like, it doesn't, if you're being honest, there's not a very good chance of that happening. Now, I don't know if it was you, Kevin, or if it was Q, or if it was Sam. Somebody I've been listening to talked about, like, we have too many picks. Let's package some of these picks up and let's have less picks but more quality, right? Maybe it was Q who said that, but I'm sure multiple people thought. Yeah, okay, I'm sure Q said it, others have said it. I could be okay with that, but the issue is that you just never know who's doing the same thing that you are, right? So if you make those decisions, you got to have multiple guys left that you're okay with 3 or 4 different guys. If 3 out of the 4 disappear, you get stuck with one. You got to be okay with that. So for me, I'm always going to be trench heavy, and I'm going to build the team inside out. So if we don't pick an offensive lineman at 14, in my opinion, that means that somebody wasn't there, or we have really good line of sight on somebody in the second round that we're going to be happy with. And we went and got that nice toy for Lamar. And that nice toy for me doesn't have to be an offensive guy. It could be Sonny Styles. Yeah. It could be Bain. I'd be happy with. It could be Jeremiah Love. To me, these guys are special guys. So those are the 3 guys that I would say, dude, best available player. If it's one of them, hey, I'm not going to get mad at you. We'll figure out the rest of it later, because these guys to me are generational. But that being said, if those guys aren't there, Carnell Tate's not doing it for me. Sadiq, maybe, but for me, it's got to be Fano. It's got to be Ioane. It's got to be Proctor. It's got to be like, there's 3 or 4 guys that I think that with that 14 pick, I could be really happy with. So I just had to get that out there, that I'm so trench warfare heavy that's where I feel like we got to go with this 14 pick in the draft.
Yeah, no, and I don't know if you guys remember with Cincinnati all those years. It wasn't really all that long ago, but the Jamar Chase Penei Sewell debate in Cincinnati, where there was that graphic that they made of like Joe Burrow with Penei Sewell blocking for him, throwing to any wide receiver, or Joe Burrow with a weird offensive lineman, not a good offensive lineman, throwing to Jamar Chase, but the ball never gets there. So it's those type, and I think that's exactly what you're talking about, Femi, where it's like, you have to make sure, because we've seen Lamar. Lamar is the ultimate floor raiser, right? And that's even with offensive line, where I'm not sure Daniel Faalele makes it a year if Lamar Jackson does not have the mobility and the ability to get to that second play, because we saw it with Cooper Rush firsthand, where he didn't have that mobility. He didn't fit the offense. And whenever there was pressure from an offensive line that had trouble blocking last season, there was no second play because Cooper didn't have that mobility. So with Lamar Jackson, him being able to win an MVP, there's no disrespect to guys like, Hollywood or Willie Snead or Seth Roberts, any of those guys. Like, those are NFL receivers, but it's not Jamar Chase. It's not Justin Jefferson. It's not AJ Brown, whoever you want to throw in that conversation. But if it's not an offensive lineman at 14, which again, I'm okay with, as long as it's like there aren't offensive linemen there that you're willing to take. You have to be sure there's going to be a guy at the next pick. I mean, I'm fully in lockstep there with you, Femi, because you don't want to get too cute with it, right? Where it's like, oh, well, we don't really like anybody who's at 14. And then at 45, it comes around, and all the other offensive linemen who you have in that range are gone. You say, oh, we're going to wait another round. And then, 80 comes around. And then you're like, oh, well, I guess we'll take the. You don't want to get too cute, right? I think you have a sure thing in Ioane, if he's there, who can be a 10-year plus starter for you. And then with Sadiq, who is an incredible talent, this tight end class is so deep to me, where if you're deciding between Ioane and Sadiq, I have a lot more trust in saying, hey, maybe the Ravens can get Eli Stowers in the second round. Or maybe the Ravens can get Tanner Koziel or one of those other later round tight ends because you already have Andrews. Drew Smythe is there. Maybe they sign David Njoku, maybe not. But even still, there are a lot of other ways where I can see Baltimore capitalizing at other positions later after they secure their offensive line. And I wouldn't be shocked if they take 2 offensive linemen in the first 3 picks. Like I feel like that would be something they could do. And if it's like Jake Slaughter or something at the center spot and you're working on him coming back. So there are so many different options. It depends on your board, but at the very minimum, you have to get an offensive lineman with one of your first 2 picks. Don't get too cute with it is what my message would be.
Any other thoughts, Femi? You agree totally with
that?
Yeah,
no, I agree. The last thing I'll say is the last mock draft that I did, we actually took Sadiq in the first round. We took Basantis in the second round, and we took Sam Hecht in the third round. So I was really happy with that because I think Sam Hecht has moved up my board above Connor Lew. Connor Lew had that ACL injury. There's no guarantee he's going to be perfect. And look, none of these centers are going to knock your socks off, but they all can be starters potentially, right? Like Jake Slaughter. But I think Sam Hecht is the guy that's moved up my board. Now, I think they're all kind of mid-third, late third, early fourth round picks. But to your point, Kevin, if we ended up with 2 of 3 of our first picks, a guard and a center that are going to plug and play and start, hey, I'd be really happy with that. Yeah. So Sam, that was what I wanted to say about kind of the center position. I think Kevin and I are locked in on that.
You guys are definitely in line. We're going to talk a little bit more about the offensive line when we get back because there is a coach that was hired as a new online coach that I think could be a deciding factor of how well this offensive line looked. You, Femi, and I talked about it yesterday, but I want to get your thoughts here on the show. So we'll talk about it here next on the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. We are back, Locked On Ravens Squad Show. Sam Njoku, Kevin Oestreicher, Femi Adebayo here talking to you about Ravens football on a Wednesday evening. Again, appreciate everybody for tuning in. Make sure you like and subscribe with the show. We talked about the offensive line, Daniel Faalele leaving, going to the New York Giants, what that means for this offensive line, what the Ravens need to target in the draft. And I think the X factor in all of this is Dwayne Ledford, who I think alongside Declan Dole and Jesse Minter, as well as Anthony Weaver, are probably the most important coaches that the Ravens brought in. And I think Dwayne Ledford is really close to the top of that list just because of what happened with the offensive line and what Dwayne Ledford is known for, what we believe he can do for this O-line. I want to get your thoughts, Femi, on him. If the Ravens weren't able to get a offensive lineman in the first round because they went get a guy like Jeremiah Love or Kenyon Sadiq, how confident are you that Dwayne Ledford will be able to still work magic the way he's done in the past with this O-line group?
No, I look, I'm going to trust. I got to be careful what I say. I might piss some people off, but I've been around a long time, so I'm patient, right? I do trust EDC. And I know that being a GM can be a thankless job because unless you win a Super Bowl, every year people are going to look back and play Monday morning quarterback with your decisions and be like, damn, look at what you did, bro. This guy went here and he did that and they did this. So unless you do something, really impressive and the guys that you draft hit, I understand. But this is the thing. If they see an opportunity in regard to drafting a guy that's a playmaker, and maybe we end up a little thinner at the end of the draft, like Kevin Zeitler is still out there too, right? Like he is a guard that we know and we can trust that he could be a patch for another year. So my thought is, and this is the other thing, we're going to get Nambi back, I believe, but if we don't, Reeder was just here for a visit, right? I think he's a very serviceable player, right? I believe that Jadeveon Clowney could still be an answer as well. So I think sometimes we get lost in the sauce of the draft, not forgetting that free agency is still going to happen all the way through training camp, and there's going to be holes that are going to be patched, before we get to training camp, and that we should, this roster is going to go, how many guys are on the roster now? Like 60? 55, we're not even close to the 90 people we're going to have when we go to camp. So I just don't want people to lose perspective. There's the kind of the microscopic component of the draft that we're super uber focused on, but then there's the telescopic component of building out the rest of the team that happens over the course of months. And I trust that Eric is super mindful of free agents that are available, draft picks that meet that kind of value need matrix that I believe that we're going to deploy. And that if we're a little thin in how the board falls, which can be out of your control, and yes, you can package things and, make things happen, but you need a partner to do that. There's no guarantee that someone's going to be there to do that with you. So you kind of have to be playing three-dimensional chess and like looking at who's available from the free agent perspective, who's going to be groomed and move up like a Devontae's. What's Devontae's last name?
Walker. Yeah.
Walker. See, man, guys, this is to my defense, I've been fasting all day too, so not helping me clearly because how many different names I've lost my mind on today. But my point is that I think he's good. Like it's his time. He's got to be the number 3 receiver, but it doesn't mean you don't try to draft a number 3 receiver. It doesn't mean you don't bring in, a Deebo Samuel, right? And I'm not saying it has to be Deebo, but you could bring in a quality guy like that. I know we don't have all the money in the world, and some of this remaining cap space, you could still clear some cap space too, by the way. So there's a lot of different things going to go into finalizing this roster. And I just don't want people to fall into despair if at the end of the draft, like you didn't feel like every hole was plugged. My guess is that we're going to come away with 2 or 3 players. You're going to be like, oh my goodness, like this is really awesome. And there's going to be a couple guys going to be like, underwhelming, but that's where the draft fell. And that was the best available guys at those positions. And so, yeah, I just want to make sure that we're not, getting too caught up in the idea that the draft is going to solve every problem, because it's not.
Yeah, and it's a really good point because I try to talk myself through this because again, I confuse myself talking in circles with it a lot. But the way that it would work is that obviously everything is so dependent on how that board falls, and you just don't know. And so I was like, okay, the Ravens, they're doing all this new stuff. They fired John Harbaugh after 18 seasons. They traded 2 firsts for Max Crosby, obviously, until they didn't do that. But still, they showed a willingness to do it. They signed Trey Hendrickson to a huge contract. The Ravens are about to sign like every free agent out there. And I got myself caught up in that a little bit. And obviously, over these last couple of weeks, it's kind of returned to it's going to be the waiting game after the draft. But I think even if it's 0 players or 1 player that they signed before, I don't know if it's going to be anybody else. The reason I think that's something that the Ravens do is because when you, I guess, don't have an idea of how the board is going to fall. And I'll just use the DeAndre Hopkins example. Let's say they signed D-Hop back and they said, you know what, D-Hop, we didn't use you enough last season. We know in this new system, we're going to have a role for you. This is what it's going to be. You're going to be the pure number 3. Tez is going to still be number 4. We're not even going to do, even though I think Tez should move up and get a promotion and whatnot. But what if they promise D-Hop a certain role? And then you still have Tez, Zay and Rashad Bateman are still there. And then let's say they do draft a Carnell Tate because he falls to them. Or let's say they fall in love with Mekhi Lemon or something and they draft him. And all of a sudden, well, we promised D-Hop this role, but we also have to play our first-round rookie and Tez Walker. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, D-Hop, we really don't need you that much anymore. Are you okay with being – no, D-Hop's not okay with being a 5th wide receiver on a team. Like, he deserves to go play somewhere. So the draft gives you an ability to – plug up holes, and then after the draft, you can identify, hey, we didn't get the edge rusher to complement Trey Hendrickson and Mike Green that we needed because that guy wasn't there in the second round for us. Let's go out there and see if Jadeveon Clowney wants to come back. But if you sign Jadeveon Clowney and then Ruben Bain falls to you, and you're like, hey, well, we have to take Ruben Bain, right? And then you said, oh, Jadeveon, we're going to play on all the early downs. We're going to have you be a force against the run. We're going to give you a big role. And then Ruben Bain comes in, or you're not going to not play Ruben Bain and over Jadeveon Clowney. So the draft gives you the ability to see how the board falls, take guys who you can say, all right, we're going to play the 14th pick a lot because he's the 14th pick. Our second round guy can plug and play here. But then we didn't get a guy good enough to play our, extra corner spot or maybe an extra safety spot. So we can go out there and sign a vet or defensive lineman, Caleb Banks. He didn't fall to us in the second. Maybe a guy like Caden McDonald they were interested in him, but he wasn't available. All of a sudden, you can say, oh, hey, DJ Reader, now we have a specific roster spot for you that we know is not going to be filled by anybody else, and we know you can slot into. And then DJ Reader says, hey, you know what? That makes a lot of sense for me. This is a role that I can be interested in. I'm going to go sign here. So I know, I taught myself in circles with it, but I promise it makes sense in my head that, there are ways that you can fill out your roster through the draft that then, like we saw in 2023, right? Jadeveon Clowney comes in, Kyle Van Noy comes in. They sign Ronald Darby after the draft. Those are the types of signings Eric DeCosta needs to hit on, and he has shown he can hit on after the draft. So, Femi has it on point, whereas, the draft is not going to say, okay, rosters are finalized, go out there and play football. There is still tweaking that you can do to make sure that you have the best 90 available for you on that roster as you head into training camp. And sometimes Jadeveon Clowney is not going to want to show up till August 31st. So you can make sure that he's there. If he comes in, you can have this competition. There's a lot they still can do.
Yeah, I think there's 2 things that I'll add, Sam, real quick. The KVN pick, his first year when he had 9.5 sacks, and then the second year he had 12.5 sacks, and then obviously he was banged up last year. Chidobe Awuzie, bro, my goodness.
Yeah.
Like, Hawkins, the guy they signed from New England. This dude is like a top 15 safety, and we got him for a pretty good price. Like, Eric does make these sly moves. What happens is some of these moves get hijacked when guys get hurt, and then you don't get to see their full potential. The thing about the NFL is 25% of your roster is going to get hurt. Like, that's just the nature of it. So when you start talking about depth and making promises, you know how NFL promises are. There's very few guys where promises are kept. It's just the way that it is. You know what I mean? And I don't think any coach lies to a player, but your job is to build your team. And you always, and I know this for a fact, and this is not hating, this is just the truth. You always tell the guy the story that's the best version of his opportunity. That's just what you do. And then you sign him. Like, I've been there. I understand it. And every once in a while it happens that way. And sometimes it just doesn't. And maybe the player doesn't play well enough, or some player plays better, or the player gets hurt. Football is so unpredictable. And I feel like this is my 5th pod today where I've used this. Art and science sometimes are one can be heavy-handed sometimes, and you don't know which one and when. The football gods do not care. Whatever happens, and you have to kind of live with it and understand that it's not a lie if people say it. Like, if they believe it, it's not a lie. Like, it doesn't happen the way that you think it's going to, but at the moment they actually believe what they were saying. But football's so complicated. There's so many layers to it that, like, I think playing 11 years in the league, I have a lot of grace for the coaches. I have a lot of grace for the players, because I think everyone intends well, but then when the rubber hits the road, you're going to do what's best for the team. You know what I mean? And when we as fans see that a dude's out there is playing, and we're like, why is this guy out here? He should not be out here. Are we missing something? I'm not going to say his name, so we're not going to talk about him anymore. But maybe that is your best option. And so today, when I look at the offensive line, and I'm not being hyperbolic when I say this, I look at Ronnie Stanley, I look at John Simpson. We'll say Corey Bullock for now. It could be is it Pinter? Danny Pinter? Is that his name? I think it could be him, right? I feel really good about Emory Jones, like really good about Emory Jones. I know he was hurt last year, but like, I think he's an athletic big man that can move, and we haven't seen him come into his full superpowers yet. And I like Roger a lot. I know he regressed a little bit, but I like Roger a lot. So, man, I feel like we can kind of go to war right now. I mean, it's not done, but like, I wouldn't be mad if we had to go to war like this today, but we know we don't have to. So we don't have to put that pressure on ourselves. I love the idea of Spencer Fano. I love the idea of Vanga Ioane. Like, it just seems to me, and then look, is there going to be a wild card here that we're not even thinking of that's going to happen? Probably, you know what I mean? But I feel like we're closer than people realize, but there's so much PTSD over what happened last year. People think we're farther away than we actually are, but that's okay, because we don't have to play a game today or tomorrow. You know what I mean? So I just want to make sure I make that point.
I have PTSD for sure. I'm still.
Sometimes I do too. I think Kevin does too. I think he's admitted it.
Oh, yes. That was the thing, even with Declan Doyle, where people were like, first-time coordinator. Didn't we just go through it? And I'm like, no, it's. I get it, I understand it, I feel it, but it's two different situations and scenarios. I hear you for sure. And actually, one thing I'll add quickly is that you could definitely, like, if you started a game today with that offensive line, I think outside of the like wild card at center, you're in a better spot, even if it's just your guard positions, right? 100%. But I think that if you could add a Ioane or a Spencer Fano or maybe a Zeitler in free agency, if you can have that, like maybe one more like sure thing, and then you have like maybe Emory Jones as a backup option, so that because injuries, it's football, right? We know injuries going to happen. It is what it is. The Ravens weren't. The guy that I think they missed the most last season, that maybe is a hot take, maybe it's not. I think they deeply missed Patrick McCary last season, because you could plug him in anywhere and get solid depth. He wasn't the best at any position, but if a guy went down, you could plug him in there and you could play him. For me, if you have that line that you just mentioned, Femi, is the backup line where it's like, okay, and I'm more so like, obviously we know Ronnie's going to start, Rosengarten's going to start, and all those guys. Yeah. But I'm talking like if Bullock is your backup option potentially, if Jones is your backup option potentially, I think those are two starter level players, assuming they have a great offseason come in and all that stuff. But you also would then maybe have a 14th pick starting. You could maybe have a vet like Zeitler starting. You put yourself in a really good position, because we know that you can never have enough depth at any position. And offensive line is a big one there too.
Yeah, agreed.
Agreed as well. Well, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll close out the show, talk a little bit more about what certain Ravens players said during the media today, and a little more Ravens talk as we get closer and closer to the draft to talk about that and more here next on the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. We are back here in the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. Sam Njoku, Kevin Oestreicher, Femi Ayanbadejo here talking to you with the Ravens football. It's been quite the off season for sure. I think this is one of the busier, if not the busiest off season that I've been a part of in my tenure as a content creator and media reporter. It's been absurd, but the content keeps growing. That's news for you guys. Great news for you guys. Great news for us. Remember, we're here twice a week, Mondays and Wednesdays, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, talking Ravens football. Kevin has his own show, the Locked On Ravens podcast, twice a day, 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Had a show just drop at 6 p.m. Has another show dropping at 6 a.m. tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. Also, the Everydayers Club. Make sure you tune in. You get a lot more content with Kevin at lockedonravens.supercast.com. Quite the offseason, as you mentioned. Lots of conversation regarding players getting signed, re-signing, the whole Lamar Jackson contract situation, and the Zay Flowers contract situation. Zay Flowers got in front of the media, talked about a lot of things, but the most important thing, and I know, Kevin, you have a show coming up tomorrow about this, but I'd be remiss if we didn't at least discuss it a little bit here. Zay Flowers says he wants to remain a Baltimore Raven. He wants to stay here. No doubt about it. He doesn't want there to be any talk outside of the fact that he's going to be a Raven for the foreseeable future. It's crazy. There's a lot of Ravens fans who don't consider him to be a wide receiver one. I'm not in that camp. Femi, I want to get your thoughts on it. Zay Flowers seems like we're in the course where Zay Flowers is going to be a Raven for a very long time.
You know how I feel about Zay. Number 5 in explosive plays last year in regard to receptions over 20 yards. The last 2 years, he is 6th in receptions and 7th in yards. Yeah, is he the archetype? Is he the prototype? He's not 6'2", 220, but he's a dog. And he has an unspoken bond, sonar capability with Lamar. Lamar always knows where he's at. He always knows where Lamar is. Why would you throw that away for a Skylar Bell? Why would you throw that away on a hope and a prayer and a wish? You have a guy that you finally drafted, cultivated, and groomed, and he fits right in. He understands the culture. He is a Raven, born into the system, totally gets it. For the life of me, I don't understand why people want to throw that away and start from scratch. Now, I know that everyone gets caught up in the JSN contract, and Sam, I went through the numbers with you. It's a 6-year deal. It averages $32.5 million. By the time Zay gets to the end of his 5th-year option, and once again, they could do what Seattle did with JSN and just take the 2 years, add new money on top of it, and keep it moving. We all know that the cap is going to continue to go up. 2 years from now, the cap's probably going to be $320 million. I just don't understand what Zay needs to do. Everybody regressed last year. He progressed last year. You know what I mean? Yes. Was there some ball security issue things? Of course there was. And I think that went around the whole team last year. But in regard to showing up, durability, big play capability, a jet sweep guy, can run for 60, blow by you, runs the deep dig route, runs the deep post, can run the hairpin route. He can do anything. You know what I mean? The only thing he's not is like a red zone big time target. Like he's not going to be the guy that you line up, as an X receiver and say, here, go catch this 9 route, from the 20-yard line. Yeah, that's the one thing. But how many guys do you actually do that with? Like how many guys, there's only one Jamar Chase. There's only one Justin Jefferson, right? Zay is obviously in the tier kind of right below those top 6 or 7. He's a top 10 receiver in my opinion. And if you put him in a Rams offense, or you put him in a Niners offense, you put him in an offense that was pass first, what do you think the numbers would look like? What do you think it would look like if Bateman was there all the time doing Bateman type stuff? You know what I mean? Like if he actually could distract people from Zay and they couldn't just pay attention to him. So, I love Zay.
Yeah. He's someone that one of his biggest things, again, he's a 3-level receiver. He can do it all, like you mentioned. But one of the biggest things that I think people underrate with Zay is his durability. He rarely ever misses a game, and availability is one of the best traits you can have. And again, injuries happen in football. I get it. But to me, he's someone that is always reliable. And like you mentioned, Femi, that entire offense passing-wise, he was the entire passing offense last season. And so he has earned it. He has deserved it. And that's the thing that I keep hammering home as well, is we went through this with Lamar Jackson back in 2023. They paid him just a little over Jalen Hurts to be the highest paid quarterback. And everyone's like, this is such a big contract. What? And then here we are 3 years later. And he's now the 8th or 9th highest paid quarterback in the league now. So to me, it's honestly better business for the Ravens if they were to get this done before Puka gets his deal, whenever that is, because it's just the longer the Ravens wait, if they truly do mean to extend him, which I hope that they do, and I believe personally they will be extended at some point here, the longer you wait, the more these wide receivers are going to get, and the more that price goes up. And again, while I also don't believe that, Zay's going to get like the Jamar Chase type deal or Justin Jefferson type deal, whenever one receiver contract happens, that puts the floor up for every other secondary wide receiver contract market there is. Puka gets a huge deal that maybe Zay's not going to get, but then Zay's going to see that and say, hey, now I want an extra X amount per year on my contract. And again, Zay has earned it. And the cool thing, especially with Zay, is that he's acknowledged, hey, now I need to take that next step. And he's already so good. I mean, but again, it's ball security. I know he mentioned last year he wasn't going to do the lateral movement so much. And, that's still an area he can get a little better at. But he's already devastating as a route runner. It's almost impossible in a lot of situations to go one-on-one with him, especially in short area stuff. I mean, he's someone that finds a way, and he's grown in the league with Lamar. Something you talked about there, which is big, Femi, it's just the relationship with Lamar and understanding. It's what Lamar and Mark have gotten so good at together over the course of their time in Baltimore. It's like the street ball aspect of it, where, if Lamar's scrambling out for that second play, Mark knows, all right, I'm going to work back to Lamar. I'm going to find a way to get open, find that soft spot. I know when my guy's going to detach from me right when Lamar is at that line, so I can break free there. Zay has started to find that. We saw Isaiah likely find that a bit with Lamar as well. Rashad Bateman has his own connection, but they haven't really played. I mean, especially like last year, or when it was a couple years ago, when like Rashad Bateman was on the field and Lamar was injured, and then Lamar was on the field and Rashad Bateman was injured. But Zay and Lamar have found that chemistry together. And, $30 million, whatever it is, 35 to a wide receiver, the Ravens have never dished out that money ever. I mean, they traded Anquan Boldin away because they didn't want to pay him. They didn't want to do it. And it's new territory for the Ravens, but we've seen them enter a lot of new territory this offseason. And that to me is what gives me hope, because if we were having this conversation when Greg Roman was the offensive coordinator, see you, Zay, you're out of here. There's no way they would ever pay a wide receiver that amount of money. But in the system that he is now in with Declan Doyle and Jesse Minter there, it makes sense. It never made sense to pay Hollywood when Greg Roman was there, because they just didn't use wide receivers that way. It was a running back and tight end centric passing offense. But now that the receivers, even with Todd Monken, it's like, okay, we're going to spread the ball around more. Receivers getting more targets. Zay's already a super high target guy anyway. He's a high volume receiver. It makes sense to give a lot of money to a player that fits your system, has a relationship with your quarterback. It might not be the A.J. Brown build or the DK Metcalf build, but that doesn't define a wide receiver one. What defines a wide receiver one is how good you are. It doesn't matter how small or big or what. None of that stuff. You can play, and Zay Flowers can play.
Yeah, amen.
Great stuff.
Dang.
All right. I have a question for you guys before we close out the show, and it has to deal with another receiver. Now, we talked about Zay Flowers. We talked about Tez Walker being a wide receiver 3. Rashad Bateman is in this weird spot right now. I think that he still has flashes of brilliance. 2 years ago, he was dynamic, reached the end zone, I think, 7 times, may have been 9 times, but he got into the end zone quite a lot, didn't have quite the year, and we could say the same for a lot of players on that Ravens roster last year. But now he enters 2026, new offensive coordinator, new mission in mind, another chance to, as Kevin mentioned, get that rapport that Zay Flowers and Lamar seem to have. Femi, what are your thoughts on Rashad Bateman? Can you see him having a resurgent year, or maybe there's a chance that they go outside? A.J. Brown's been linked to the Ravens. You talked about Cardinal Tate potentially falling down to the Ravens, or even a Tyson. What are your thoughts about Rashad Bateman? Where does he fit in with this offense moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to have a great opportunity to kind of just, throw last year in the trash. And we know that when he's peak Rashad, we know what he can do. What was it, 2 years ago, 9 touchdowns, 700 some odd receiving yards, big play, guy. And we know he gets open, right? You've seen some of those statistics, those next gen stats that he's hard to cover, right? But I think injuries and regression on the offensive line and we know all the things that went wrong. And Rashad gets in his head a little bit. I think he's really articulate. I think he's really intelligent. I also think he's a sensitive person too. And I'm okay with that. But don't be your own worst enemy. Finish your routes. Don't lash out. Be thoughtful. And I think he's come so far. And I am cheering for him. He's somebody that I pull for emotionally because I think he's really committed. And I think sometimes, just kind of like Lamar, when people that don't really know him start talking about him, it's really more about the negative stuff, but not realizing how committed he is to the game and how important it is to him. So I think he can get right back on the horse this year. I'm actually expecting him to, but as a GM and as a coaching staff, you've got to prepare for the worst case scenario, right? Like there's no guarantee he's going to return back to form. So you kind of got to be mindful of who do you draft, when do you draft them, who do you bring in off the street. But before we kind of close this whole thing down, I just want to say this one thing. I do think that Kenyon Sadiq can kind of be that playmaker that can be an ex big body and a tight end. So that might minimize or protect Rashad Bateman when you have a Kenyon Sadiq. But in regard to the draft, there's probably some players, obviously later in the draft that would be right player, kind of right value at that time. And I say you draft them. And once again, you put everybody in the cauldron and you turn up the heat and you just see what happens. But I think Rashad's going to bet on himself. And I think that he could return to form. So I believe in him. I want him to have the opportunity, but everything's got to be earned. Nothing is given.
Yeah, Sam, I think you actually made this point a couple weeks ago about, the Bears offense last season in terms of target share with receivers, where I think Rashad Bateman could be the one to benefit the most from Declan Doyle coming in that system, where I have the stats for both the Bears and the Ravens offense up right now. And Rome Odunze led the Bears in targets last year with 90, and then it was DJ Moore at 85, and then Colson Loveland at 82. We know that Zay Flowers was by far the Ravens target leader last year with 118. Next closest was Mark Andrews at 70. The next closest receiver to Zay, 118 targets. Zay, number one receiver. Number two receiver was DeAndre Hopkins with 39. That's almost 100 less targets in the Ravens offense than Zay Flowers at the wide receiver spot. So I think the ball, where I still think Zay is going to get over 100 targets next season if he plays a full complement of games, still going to be the focal point of that group. But I think with the system that Declan Doyle is going to bring in here, and obviously keeping some of the stuff as well. It's not just going to be like he takes the entire Bear system, plops it down, and that's what it is in Baltimore. There's going to be wrinkles and whatnot. But I think that Rashad Bateman, with added opportunities, with the separating what he is, and Femi mentioned it, he gets open. If it's like first read Rashad Bateman, boom, getting him the ball quickly, I think it could be a really bounce back season. Because I think for Rashad Bateman, I think some of it's momentum based too. Where, if he gets that ball early and he's like, all right, we're doing it today, he's doing it today. But sometimes when it's, he's through the first half without a catch, maybe there's more attention on him. Maybe there was an unfortunate drop. Like Femi said, I think that kind of gets to him a little bit, which is okay. Like that happens. It's not just a Rashad Bateman thing. But I think for him, with added opportunities and more opportunities to prove himself, and I think that will happen in this offense, I think it could mean a lot of good things for Bateman.
Hey guys, real quick, my phone is probably gonna just die at some point. So if you see me just drop off the screen,
Okay.
it's been a hell of a day. You guys will get a better version of me tomorrow. I promise, Kevin. Like your boy is toasted. I still haven't eaten yet.
Hey, great! You did a great job, man. Again, you forgot 3 names. I forget.
Yeah, I did. I forgot 3 names.
Sometimes
I think I threw out like 20. I threw out like 20.
Exactly. That's a successful. That's a successful rate. So we got it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate the grace. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, no problem. Well, that's good way to close out the show. I appreciate you for tuning in, everybody, and thank you so much, Femi, for joining us. Q will be back next week. Maybe we'll have Femi back and have Femi and Q ranting together. That'd be fantastic.
You and Coop just talk the whole time.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys will get a word in. Sam, you thought I cut you off. It'll be over.
Yeah,
It'll be over.
I will love it. Well, again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. For myself, Kevin, and Femi, thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Locked On Ravens Squad Show, and we will see you on Monday.